Hello, you guys. Hope you guys are having a beautiful and blessed day. I'm going to pop an On Guard cough drop in my throat so that just in case I start feeling that tickle, since I'm dealing with lots of, gunk and congestion and stuff with my house renovation stuff. So hope you guys have been having a beautiful and blessed week. Hope that this week has been really fruitful for you with all that you've been learning through this study. And those of you who have picked up the books, definitely share in the group, tidbits that have been really helpful and supportive for you. Have you been focusing on eating when you eat? Or are you still trying to put that into practice of not being just mindlessly, going about and eating? Are you making sure that your treats, the things that you reward yourself with, that they are high quality and to just really and truly be with it, enjoy it? Let's see, what else? What are some of the other things that we've learned? What about stress? Have you been able to reduce your stress? Things like that. So I'm going to go in and change some of the titling of some of the videos because I think I got off track on the week sequence. But I know that we're in week 4 of the book. At least I'm pretty sure. That's what I studied. That's where I had marked. And so you guys can let me know if I am wrong on this. So that's what we're going to dive in today. It'll help you guys prep for next week to be able to start really, gearing your week up to be able to make sure that you are ready for continuing on with this amazing journey of being fearless with your food, right? And being able to have food freedoms. So starting with, just like we have been, the Slow Down Diet by Marc David. So week 4, he talks about the metabolic power of rhythm, and I really super like this one. And I do have to say, I'm going to give a little side note, that I had a harder time weaving this book with the Fearless book for this particular week. But I was able to still do it. So my challenge is going to be that anything that I don't bring up, I want to see any of the parallels that you guys, that was helpful, that you were able to pull little nuggets from both of the chapters that definitely weaved and worked well together. So the metabolic power of rhythm. He writes in the beginning, rhythm is everything. The whole of our biology is a fantastic clockwork of precise chemical and hormonal rhythms. Master rhythm and you master metabolism. So master rhythm and you master metabolism. One of the simplest and most reliable ways to measure the metabolic rate of the human body is to take its temperature. All right, so I want you to think about the old rhythm method. All right, there actually was science behind that. When a woman takes her temperature first thing in the morning, it should consistently be a particular temperature, right? And then it has certain dips and flows depending on where her cycle is. So if she's not seeing any response, then that means there is something hormonally going on. And so she needs to go to another biomarker to be able to help her determine where her hormones are at and how to be able to help her hormones. So it's really kind of cool to be able to know that when we take our temperature, and we consistently take it at particular times, say first thing in the morning, then at noon, then in the evening, and we start charting it and start, watching it, we're able to see how our body is responding even metabolically. So the hotter you are, the more metabolic you'll be. Recall that the Latin name for our midsection, solar plexus, means gathering place for the sun. The more efficiently we harness the sun's warmth, the better we digest, assimilate, and calorie burn. I really like this. Body temperature has a rhythm that is consistent and predictable for most everyone. It reveals some important insights, and it unleashes our metabolic potential. Because you're naturally heating up in the morning, eating at this time is a smart bet if you're trying to lose weight. And how many of us kind of reverse that, right? We tend to eat the least in the morning and eat the most in the evening. And he goes through this chapter, why that's reversed and why that's backwards. He puts, think of your gut as a furnace. When you add fuel, the heat rises. Now, there are, of course, exceptions. People who live in hot weather climates do great on no breakfast, a light breakfast, or a fruit breakfast. But basically, rule of thumb is that your breakfast should be one of your larger meals instead. And there's lots of argumentation either way. I go back to, what does your gut say to you? If you find that your body's just not, your furnace is not burning as well as it should, then does it have to do with what you are or aren't eating first thing in the morning? Body temperature continues a slow, steady rise and subsequently peaks around noon. It will exactly reach its apex the very moment the sun finds its high point in the sky. I think that's like super cool. Our digestive force is therefore hottest at lunchtime. Body temperature dips for the period between approximately 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. And this is just part of our human rhythm. Body energy metabolism in the form of blood flow and oxygenation is rerouted to digestion after our midday meal. So numerous studies have shown that 1 or 2 15 to 20 minute rest periods during the day will profoundly increase cognitive function, physical performance, mood, and energy. So this goes back to what he was saying, that whole blood flow of digestion for our midday meal, that we tend to sometimes, feel kind of sluggish. Now, there could be multiple reasons why we feel sluggish. Did we overload on carbohydrates? Did we, there's multiple different things, but our body's rhythm could be also that it's just that natural time to kind of just rest and restore. And so you don't even need sleep in the afternoon during this time. It's just simply to rest, to be still, so that you can recharge your battery. Simply put, resting is a metabolic enhancer. So how many of you ever just felt rejuvenated after you've just even sat for 15, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? Just allowing yourself to rest your mind. At around 4 to 6 p.m., your body temperature starts to rise again. This is when most people feel their energy return. And by around 9 o'clock, the body temperature begins another downward trend in preparation for sleep. Sleep research reveals that we cannot fall asleep soundly unless temperature is dropping. So how many of you have a hard time falling asleep if it's really hot in your bedroom, right? So that helps you kind of understand that's part of the reason why. Let's see. When you eat, it is important. When you eat is as important as what you eat. In a typical study, researchers put a group of people. I really liked this study, and that's why I'm including this, because it's super cool and it's super interesting. In a typical study, researchers put a group of people on a 2,000 calorie diet. In the first part of the study, test subjects could only eat their 2,000 calories at breakfast. They ate nothing else for the rest of the day. With this one meal in the morning, everyone either lost weight or maintained their existing weight. In the second phase of the study, the same exact people ate the same exact 2,000 calorie diet, except this time they could only eat it at dinner. With this one meal for the entire day, eaten in the evening, every single person in the study gained weight. This is why counting calories to lose weight can be a waste of energy. So timing is truly everything. He writes also, an important aspect of metabolism that popular science tends to overlook is the fact that exercising your digestive function, especially at the right time, makes metabolism stronger. So I challenge you to experiment with that. And remember, we have to experiment for more than a week, right? Be your own biohacker. It has to, usually 2, 3, 4 weeks gives you a really good, measuring stick of, all right, start shifting your meals of either, your heavier meal at noon and a moderate one at breakfast and, a very smaller one at dinner time. If you want to get the ultimate metabolic benefit of eating, don't eat your most substantial and nutrient-dense meal when your digestion is on a downturn, the evening hours. So the first meal sets the rhythm. Understand that your body temperature is naturally rising in the morning to prepare you for a metabolic resurgence. And then, let's see. Oh, he also writes, when the brain senses trouble with the food supply, it does the most simple and impactful metabolic reprogramming to conserve energy, store fat, and forget about building muscle. So we don't want that to happen, right? We don't want to be, starving ourselves during the day, and then all of a sudden at evening, we decide to eat lots and lots because then our body's thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know when my next meal is going to be. Now, we've been fasting. All right, so that is a totally different aspect of it all. If any of you practice fasting, whether a day fasting, whether an absolute, a abstinence kind of fasting, abstinence means just eliminating certain foods, certain either food groups or things that you enjoy, and whether you fast for nutritional purposes or for spiritual purposes, fasting actually can be very healing for the body also, but it's a different type of mindset as well. And your body is able to recognize what you're doing with that. What I have been doing with my fasting, I used to have it to where if I did a 24-hour fast, it was from dinner to dinner. But after having learned a lot of this from this book, I have shifted it to where if I do an absolute, it is from a breakfast, and I go through an entire day until the following day's breakfast. So it actually ends up being more of a 36-hour or whatever, I'm not quite sure. But just so that I'm able to definitely get that shift. And it's been very beneficial for me physically and spiritually. So just, keep that in mind of if you do practice fasting, whether again for nutritional benefits or for spiritual benefits, that, shifting it a little bit is very helpful. And if you do want to break fast at dinner time, I have done that a couple of times, the last couple of years. I tend to then have it for my dinner is a soup or a veggie drink or something, just so that it's not too much on my system at night time, so that I'm breaking my fast at that time. So understanding that, okay, going back to morning time, coffee, how many of us have just, will drink coffee first thing in the morning with nothing on our stomach, right? Or nothing in our stomach. Coffee itself raises cortisol levels. And the problem with that is that when we overproduce cortisol, we age prematurely and we wear down our weakest links and we gain weight around the middle section, because cortisol, that's what it's doing. It's the fight or flight, right? So the body is designed to optimally digest and calorie burn when the sun is at its apex in the sky. By not putting fuel in the furnace at this time, or simply by not eating enough, you miss your peak metabolic window of opportunity, which is approximately 12 noon to 1:30 in the afternoon. Now, it's pretty cool to think about that, you can sit, and, if you think about European countries, France and Italy, all that stuff, how they sit and lounge for hours, and it seems like they can just sit there and eat tons and tons of bread and pasta and this and that, and drink lots of wine, and it's in the middle of the day. How are they able to do that and still have an average of a lower body mass than other countries? And it has to do with, one, they're truly listening to their body. They're also eating at the high apex of the day. And so their body's able to process all those calories much more efficiently. So the metabolic gift of sleep. One of the downsides of consuming a high volume of food before bed is that we miss some of the greatest metabolic gifts of sleep. And this is why. Because when you're consuming a big meal right before bed, much of the metabolic energy that is usually spent in maintenance, detoxification, repair, and growth is necessarily rerouted into digestion. So your body can't do two functions at once. So when you have food in your gut, it wants to process that. It's kind of the same thing of, a lot of people think that when you are sick, what is the old adage of feed the flu, starve a cold, or maybe it's vice versa. I truly believe in not eating, and whenever your body is fighting something off, whether it's allergies, whether it's whatever, to listen to that instinct of not eating, because when you eat, your body then has to redirect its processing to your food, to your guts, to your digestion, rather than helping fight off whatever your body is being inundated with. So that's really important to think about, and remember that fasting during sickness is actually very healthy. It's not bad at all. The period between dinner and breakfast is evolution's built-in fast. That's because the fasting state is the ideal biological milieu to rebuild the body. And it's the same thing when you're sick. It's rebuilding the body. So it's good to actually fast during sickness. And that's also why breakfast is called break fast. We're ending this necessary period with food in the morning. Now going on to lunch, eating a relaxed, sane, sensuous lunch makes it easier to have a lighter dinner. All right, so again, look at what Europeans do, and eat less at dinner. So by planning a late afternoon snack, then you're making a preemptive strike against ravenous, out of control after work eating. You'll be making a conscientious choice to attend to your universal right to nourish yourself, thereby short-circuiting the habit of denying yourself food and then devouring it. You'll also be making a powerful statement that your job doesn't supersede your health. So here's a really super cool thing to think about. So we tend to, here in the States, poo-poo or see it as taboo to drink in the middle of the day or the middle of the afternoon, right? European countries, they do it all the time. They conduct business meetings and all that stuff. But what happens when Americans tend to either wait until only the weekend to drink, if they don't have a problem? We're talking about just, let's just look at alcohol as same thing as like chocolate or a dessert, right? Not something that somebody struggles with for addictive reasons or for emotional reasons, right? Because again, it's really similar to food. Some people choose food to hide from their emotions, and some people choose alcohol, right? But we're talking about as stable as a person can be, because we all have our emotional baggage, right? So what if during that snack time, that late afternoon snack time, it's also supposed to be when you're just kind of relaxing, sitting and just breathing for a moment, you allowed yourself, if you wanted to indulge in a half a glass of wine or a mixed drink with some nuts or some vegetables or some fruit, right? Or a, Bloody Mary, because there you go, you got V8 juice, right? I'm just using this as an example, right? What if you did that during that? Would you all of a sudden, have terrible cravings for the afternoon or for the evening? Would you all of a sudden not be able to control yourself? Would you be, too loopy? It's just one drink, right? I'm not talking to binge and have 2 or 3 or whatever. I'm talking about just taking a relaxing moment to have your afternoon snack. And what if your afternoon snack included a drink of something? All right, so I actually experimented with this about a month or so ago, of a couple of afternoons during the week, of being able to just allow myself a glass of wine with no guilt, with no fear, with great freedom. All right, and it was nice. I was relaxed for the rest of the evening, didn't feel the need for anything more. There was one of the afternoons that I only poured a half of a glass because it just what felt right and felt nice. And like I said, I only did it a couple of times during the week for 2 weeks, just to experiment and to see if it was something that, would become a habit for me. Now, we all know what our thresholds are, but I wanted to do it specifically to be able to experiment to see if what, is being shared in this book is definitely sound, which I have always believed it is, but to continue to biohack for myself so that I can share with you guys. And so it was something that really resonated with me of, we tend to sometimes put pressure on ourselves, and we tend to sometimes think of things as taboo because of the culture of the States. But when we try to think of the European countries about how they approach food and drink and stuff like that, sometimes I think there's a little bit more freedom for us to be able to, breathe a little bit better and to be able to really release that metabolic rhythm within our bodies. So let's see, we're going to wrap up this book. I'm getting close. So your primary task for this week is to remember that the strategies in your life is to be key rhythmic, to be able to eat regularly, to balance your macronutrients at meals, planning the time and size of your meals, planning your daily meals and snacks, and using caffeine wisely, just like using any, stimulant or relaxer, making sure that you're not grabbing for it to give you a false sense of energy, or you're not grabbing for a drink for the false sense of relaxation, that it is part of truly, being in the moment with those items, whether it be chocolate, whether it be coffee, whether it be a glass of wine, whether it be that piece of bread with butter, right? And then remembering to get regular rest and regular play. So let's see if there's anything else that I circled. The final thing. So our key lessons for this chapter is to align with the rhythms of life, which brings us metabolism into our fullest force. Right? Our digestive and calorie burning metabolism are our strongest when the sun is highest in the sky during lunchtime and weakest in the late evening hours. Skipping breakfast and lunch or under-eating at these meals slows down our metabolism and inhibits weight loss. So again, I challenge you to shift your mindset of, biohacking for a couple of weeks of if your evening meal tends to be your heaviest meal, or if you tend to skip lots of meals, to really tune in to your body and give yourself a little bit more in the morning. If you totally skip it at all, or if you tend to eat really minimal amount, then maybe, ramp it up as far as the nutrient level, maybe some more vegetables or something. I like having vegetables. I totally shift my stuff all the time from what our culture, tends to have us do in the morning versus in the evening. And I like salads for breakfast. I like soups for breakfast, and there's nothing wrong with that. So embrace you, and don't be afraid to do something totally different than what everybody else does. Eating at irregular and unpredictable times each day causes our digestive and calorie burning metabolism to fall out of sync. So again, find your rhythm, and it might be difficult at first, because we're so go, 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 right? But when you find your rhythm, you're able to see that, you know what, this tends to be when I tend to get hungry, when I need to eat. I have found that for me, between 8 and 9 is my best breakfast time. Between usually about 1:30 is my best lunchtime. I tend to then not have a hunger or a need for a snack, but if I do, if I just want to, it'll be about 3 or 4, and then I tend to actually not be hungry at all at dinner time. And if I do, because I set the table for our family, we eat usually between 5:30 and 6:30. I will sit with them, and if I'm not super, super hungry, I'll have a glass of vegetable juice, or I'll do a Terra Greens shake, or I may just have some tea. But if I am hungry, then that's when I'll have, some sweet potato with a salad or in soup, or I make sure that I again have a good macro and micronutrients to help my insulin as well as my cortisol to be able to sleep really well at night. But again, making sure that my portion is the smallest out of all of the day. And when you shift your mindset of the meals, you'll find that when your middle meal, your lunch meal is the heaviest, or the heavier, the larger one, you will find that your dinner meal, you may very well find that you're not hungry at dinner. And this happens to me a lot. And so I just stay in tune with it. And I trust it. And my husband has learned to know that I'm just not hungry at dinner time sometimes. Now, if I am going to enjoy a glass of wine with him, then I make sure that I definitely have a little bit of something. But again, I truly trust my gut intuition and my instincts of what is going to work best for me, for my rhythm. And then there's some days that those windows don't always work for me, that I'm just not feeling hungry at a particular time, or I'm feeling hungrier at an earlier time, and I have to think and reflect what's going on. Has work been a little bit more chaotic? Has ministry been a little bit more chaotic? Or has Josephine's schooling been a little bit more this or that? What is going on? Have things been really abundant, so I haven't paid attention to my food? Or have been working on a lot of emotional things? So is it making me feel more ravenous? What are some of the indicators of why my regular eating cycle might be kind of off? So those are things to really think about and reflect on. Remember that excessive consumption of refined carbohydrates causes a rhythmic meltdown, making the brain think that it's summer and signaling the body to store fat. Again, going back to our prehistoric whatever, right? There was this true need to, caveman days. There was a true need to store up. They weren't sure about, famish time. They weren't sure about different things, right? So the body adjusted to storing up and then losing. And then that was usually when they really stored up during summertime. They ate a lot of fruit, a lot of different things. We don't have that same issue or problem now. We're not always having to go out and hunt and gather, right? And our metabolism, our body has actually changed and shifted with the times. It knows how to, but yet our mind, for some reason, we have not. So we tend to, because everything is so accessible to us, we tend to think that it's forever summer. And that's part of the reason why our bodies are not getting the rest that it needs. And it's getting this constant overload of toxins, constant overload of even fruit for, the simplisticness of that. So just really being in tune that not only is there a rhythm during the day for our sleeping or for our eating, there's also a rhythm through each season, throughout the year. And then us as women, there's even another rhythm that we have to pay attention to. So that's everything for the slow down diet. So how was I able to weave in the Fearless book? Like I said at the beginning, this was a little bit more difficult with this chapter, but I look forward to you guys sharing with me anything that you saw that was able to weave with this. that I didn't bring up. So this particular chapter is called Fearless Dignity. All right. So I'm going to give you a review of the chapter. She talks about a biblical name reveals who a person is. God's self-revealed name, I am, confesses his desire to be known. God's name reveals him as the source of all being and his eternal covenantal relationship to humanity. I am will be with his people. With his everlasting name, God declares his eternal love for me. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and put in your name, all right? Kelly, or, your name. God is a God of people, not of things. That I exist proves I am loved by God and therefore worthy of love. And that's going to be the key one that I really honed in on with this chapter. That I exist proves I am loved by God and therefore worthy of love. Evil is a lack of potential good rather than a being itself. And my woundedness and suffering are the weak point of my soul and the seat of my predominant fault. So those last three are pretty much where I target in on with helping us understand and how to weave in the metabolic power of rhythm. All right, so make sure I mark myself there. Got my books going everywhere. So going back to the beginning. So here she talks about fearless dignity. And like I said, I had a harder time trying to really weave this book, but there were a few nuggets that really stuck out with me, and I'm going to get to them. So here she talks on page 87. The more different from God we are, the more terrifying he is to us. And it goes back to a couple other pages previously that she talks about why we tend to see God as we tend to be fearful of him, right? She gives a whole excerpt from Exodus 19:16-21, and she then explains why was it terrifying and dangerous for the people at Mount Sinai when God appeared to them in this area and revealed his law. Because the reason why it was fearful to them and terrifying is because, as Blessed John Henry Newman put it so exquisitely, that in God's absolute clarity, he sees who we are, and in him who is utterly transparent, we see ourselves as we truly are too. So the more different from God we are, the more terrifying he is to us. So the less in line we are with him, then the more frightening he feels. All right, so it's kind of interesting. Our metabolic rhythm is about being in line with the sun and with, knowing that our metabolic power actually burns the most at noontime. And if we're eating that way, then we're able to be more in line with how we feel and how we're able to perceive things and be able to feel more natural, right? So I saw that as kind of an area of being able to really work on, of being able to see that when I'm feeling different, when I'm feeling frustrated, when I'm feeling, just kind of not in line with my physicalness as well as my spiritualness, what's going on, right? God calls us to complete transparency by revealing us to ourselves in his word. So that's why it's so important for us to always take it to the word, so that we can find that rhythm within our lives, to find that rhythm of, what are some of our food issues, so that we can have that freedom and to be fearless. Here on page 89, she talks about a quote from Malachi Martin, who's an experienced exorcist. So this is pretty interesting. It's kind of deep. But I kind of liked being able to weave this in here. he writes, no one wants to believe in evil, really above all, not in an evil being and an evil spirit. Everyone wants to abolish the idea. To admit the existence of evil means a responsibility, and no one wants that responsibility. That is the opening through which the evil spirit crawls, stilling all suspicions, making everything seem normal and natural. This is the thought, the unwariness of the ordinary human being, which amounts to a disinclination to believe in evil. And if you do not believe in evil, how can you believe in or ever know what good is? So I found that interesting, and I put here, maybe if we tuned in to our metabolic power of eating with energy and the sun, we would not fall so much into, and not necessarily fall, but I saw that, evil likes to live in darkness, right? And so it wants us to hide and to binge eat or binge drink. And when do we tend to do that? Late at night, right? Or we sacrifice, or we punish ourselves, in essence, all day long. And even if it's not intentional, let's say you just have a really busy day, and next thing you know, you haven't eaten, and you start eating ravenously, then you were actually punishing yourself unintentionally by not, taking care of yourself nutritionally. So you can lift it up and say, okay, Lord, I know I should have stopped and paused when I got hungry, but I'm going to count it as a non-intentional fast. I'm going to offer it up. I do that sometimes. But I'm going to, at this very moment, pause and make sure that when I do eat, it's not ravenous. It is not within the dark. It is within the light. And I'm not going to, do anything that puts me in shame. All right? So, because it's so easy for us to all of a sudden, eat a whole bunch because we're so hungry. And then we beat ourselves up over it. And we don't want to do that. So that's where I kind of saw that as a really kind of fun, stretching, parallel. Then here on the next page, she puts blindness in a person is quote unquote evil, because and it's referring to that biblical scripture that I know that many of you will recognize. So I'm not going to go into that, but I'm going to share the parallel here. So blindness in a person is quote unquote evil because by nature, a human body has the potential to see. This is a kind of natural evil as opposed to moral evil, which involves personal culpability. All right, so, think about the blind man that Jesus healed, right? And it was something that he was born with. It had nothing to do with his sins or, I can't remember how they talk about it in the Bible, all that stuff. But the point being is he healed him because it was something that was not of his own doing. And he was Jesus, right? He can do what he wants to. But how does this relate to this chapter of our metabolic power of rhythm, right? So here I put... this relates to how we have to respect our genes, but we can help our metabolism. So, here, the nature of, a person who is naturally born, with blindness, right? That's their genes. That's the parallel there, right? So that's something that's natural, right? But we have a moral responsibility to protect our metabolism, to love our metabolism, and to respect our metabolism, to respect our genes, to rather than feeling like, I could get really frustrated and really upset that, how come I'm never going to have, twiggy legs or tweety legs, and there might be some woman out there who is like so frustrated that she can't put on muscle mass on her legs, blah, blah, and instead, if we loved and honored what we look like as individuals and really reflect on, if you want to get really deep about it, rather, think about your genetic heritage. When we're talking about genes, we can't change our genes, so to speak. So look about, okay, So if I happen to be a woman who is shorter and carries her weight more in the hip and thigh area, why? What was the reason? Well, my heritage is German Russian. So then I look up in that area and I look to see what is the predominant body type of that area. Why does a woman in that area need to be able to have more muscle mass in the hip, buttock, and thigh area? Well, because they're in like the cold tundra. Hello, right? They need to be able to work. They need to be able to do this and that. And so when I started to really appreciate my genetic heritage, I was able to appreciate the body that I was gifted with, and to not have fears of, it related then to food as well, of that, okay, that is the way I am built, and I am going to love this piece of chocolate because this piece of chocolate is not going to make a difference of how I was built. If I gain any weight, yes, I'm going to gain more than likely in my buttock and thigh area, but that's okay because one piece of chocolate isn't going to make me gain weight, right? So it's, again, that whole mindset, as well as, really getting in tune with your power of rhythm. So let's see. So on page 92, Tidings of Great Joy, she writes, grace increases or expands potential, the capacity for God. If there is no limit to grace, where might the limit be to my spiritual potential, besides the number of my days and my willingness to cooperate? So here, what if we cooperate with our body's natural rhythm? That's the big take home I want with that particular, grace increases when we are willing to cooperate, right? Not only with our Lord, but with our bodies, with what is natural to our bodies, what is going to help our bodies thrive, and to help us to be those fearless women, to not be afraid to eat a piece of chocolate, to have that glass of wine, to partake in a fellowship, right? To be able to have true food freedoms. So it brings us to Walking Wounded on page 93. As our adversary and opponent, Satan uses our suffering to keep us enslaved to unforgiveness and fear, and to prevent our reaching God fully in love. Woundedness and suffering is the most common entry point for Satan. So before I continue to read that paragraph, I want you to really think about what are some areas that the enemy has used food to wound you, to be able to prevent you from truly feeling your rhythm of life, to truly feel as beautiful as God already knows that you are. So Satan uses these entry points, right? Because it is usually where our deepest, most long-lasting fears were implanted. Doctors and theologians of the church tell us that woundedness is the weakest point of the soul and usually the seat of the predominant fault. Satan ruthlessly exploits this area in order to lead us to despair and decadence. So here the enemy tries to convince us we can't make change, right? That we need food to soothe our pain, to distract us, to be able to do anything in life. And instead, he's preventing you from wanting to heal and to be able to work through whether your wound is specifically with food, if there's a food addiction, what is the root of the food addiction, or if it's just using food to emotionally, soothe yourself, or again, like we've talked about before, to deny yourself food because of emotions or whatever. So remember that, again, we are daughters of Eve, and since the enemy attacked Eve first, we must always Remember, there's that connection with us and food. Each of us is wounded in one way or another, whether as a result of personal sin, trauma, divorce, death, or abandonment. And this woundedness is expressed as fear, depression, anxiety, addiction, obsessions, compulsions, perfectionism, and all manners of human ill. Woundedness originates from a lack of love. In most cases, the lack of love is perceived from God, parents, a spouse, friends, and so forth, regardless of whether or not we are or were actually loved. Because according to psychologists, intense emotion imprints memory. We blot out, ignore, or misinterpret expressions of love we actually did receive and cling to a distorted notion that we are not loved, so that the perception becomes our darkened and sometimes false reality. Because God is love, when I experienced a lack of love, now this is the author, I am really experiencing a lack of God. All right, perceived or not. It is what she felt, and it is what we tend to feel. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier of the enemy likes to keep us in the dark. He likes us to keep our wounds, our hurts, our pain, our sin, all that in the dark. And so when we keep things in the light, and with it weaving with this chapter of the metabolic power of rhythm, if we are eating in the light, right, when our body is getting the most amount of energy in the middle of the day, and we're eating our largest meal in the middle of the day, we're eating and living in light, right, then my cough drop's starting to wear off. Let's see if I can last this out right. I may or may not. We'll get another on guard going on here. All right. I'm going to pause. And I'll finish up in about 5 minutes.